Hi, welcome everybody. I'm Linda Bylander. I'm the coordinator of the Becoming Outdoor Woman program, which is part of the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. Welcome to this Minnesota Outdoor Skills and Stewardship series. Today is on Nature RX, or a prescription for going out to nature, which is very timely this time of year with the consumer spending and Black Friday around the corner. We have an alternative for you that's very healthy. And our presenter today is Sara Holger. Sara is the lead interpretive naturalist at Whitewater State Park down in southern Minnesota. She also does programs for the bow women, the bow program. So she offers forest bathing and looking at the trumpeter swans and a variety of different classes for us. She's a very enthusiastic leader down there in southern Minnesota, and we're very pleased to have her. So I'm going to turn it over to Sara.
Wonderful, thank you. Get my presentation pulled up here. Second. Back up there. Great. Well, like Linda just said, my name is Sara. I'm down here at Whitewater State Park. My my photo background isn't from the park, obviously, because there's no leaves left on the trees down here. But I am sitting here in the park looking out the window at the birds, and it's just a beautiful place to be. So Whitewater State Park is located in southeast Minnesota. We're in Winona County. We're kind of right between Winona and Rochester. It's about a 2-hour drive from the Twin Cities. So if you've never been down here, come on down and visit me sometime. So yeah, I love my job. I'm a lead interpretive naturalist here at Whitewater. I get to work with the public and help introduce people to the outdoors. And I'll talk a little bit more about naturalist programming a little bit later in the presentation. A little bit about my background. So I originally grew up west of the Twin Cities, kind of around Lake Minnetonka, and I've been living down in this part of the state since 1996. I have 3 kids. I have 2 daughters that are in college up at the University of Minnesota, and then I have a little guy who's not that little anymore in the pictures. He's pretty tiny there. He's 7 years old now, and we are an outdoors family. So we are outdoors a lot, exploring the public lands we have in Minnesota, and I don't think my kids realize how privileged they are to have such um, opportunities to be outdoors. They're pretty spoiled. In addition to being a naturalist for Minnesota State Parks, I recently wrapped up my Nature and Forest Therapy Guide certification through the Association of Nature and Forest Therapy Guides. And so I've been learning a lot over the last 6 months through this training about just the health and wellness benefits of being outdoors. And so we're able to offer some forest bathing classes and some of these Nature RX type programs down here at Whitewater State Park. And I think this is a growing trend across Minnesota. There's more and more of these certified guides. So you'll start, I think if you haven't already been seeing advertising for these types of opportunities, you will in the next few years here. So I just want to take a minute to ask everybody to just remember back to when you were a child and think about, nature in your neighborhood or nature places you were able to visit. Maybe you were lucky enough to have parents or adult mentors who spent time taking you out to go fishing or hiking or camping or picnicking. Think about your childhood and try to remember an early nature experience you had. Maybe it was nature play. In this picture, this is a picture from my childhood. Like I said, we grew up west of the Twin Cities. We were like 3 blocks from Lake Minnetonka. There was swamps in our neighborhood. It was a pretty wetland, swampy area. And so we had access to the swamp and the willow trees. And there was a public walking trail. I think it was a city managed trail where we could go explore behind the swamp. And we built forts everywhere. So this is one of our forts. This one was called the CDH. It stood for the Camouflage Dude House. And it was a girls only fort. And I have a lot of very fond memories of fort building and just the social interactions with the kids in the neighborhood when we would play outside in the forest. And the willow tree is a very symbolic tree to me, even in my adulthood now. When I see willow trees, it's like I'm teleported back to that time in my life when things were a lot less stressful and it was kind of a safe, free, welcoming space for me to be amongst those trees. And so I asked folks to remember their early childhood kind of nature experiences. And I've done this for 20 years now in talks that I've given. And when I'm in person with people, I can actually see like a shift in their presence when they start to reflect on those kinds of memories. It's like the muscles in the face relax, the eyes light up, even the way people start to communicate and giggle. It's like there's a tremendous power in just remembering our experiences, playing outdoors. And so, that's just kind of reiterating what we're going to talk about today. There's power in these experiences. So this is a picture of the African Savannah. And this is a kind of an image that is deeply embedded within all of us because it goes back to our very beginnings. This is our original home. And, we evolved as a species as part of nature. If we think of an ecosystem and we think of, say, a forest with the trees and the plants and the mosses and the soils and the minerals and the waters and the animals and the birds and insects, that's a whole ecosystem. It's a functioning unit that all parts have to be there for it to be healthy. And we are part of that ecosystem. We're not separate, even though we've kind of convinced ourselves in a way that we're different than nature, we're above nature, we're separate from it. In reality, we're one piece of the ecosystem. And we've been outdoors most of our existence. It's really only the last 50 to 75 years where we've really become indoor creatures. They say when the screens were invented for windows to keep the insects out, and when air conditioners were invented, and then television, that those were three kind of modern technologies that really pushed people indoors. And if we think about the television, now everybody's carrying one in their pocket, right? Because your cell phone can do pretty much everything, and there's unlimited access to videos and all kinds of social media content. And so we have a lot of things that are kind of barriers to getting outdoors. And so if we've lived for, thousands, if not millions of years outdoors, and then all of a sudden as a species, we're just kind of pushing ourselves inside, there are definitely going to be health benefit or health impacts of that. So how does nature nurture well-being? This is a quote from Dr. Brent Bauer. He works down here at the Mayo Clinic. And this is interesting. If you look, he's the director of the Mayo Clinic Complementary and Integrative Medicine Program. So that's really cool that Mayo has this whole other branch where they're looking at more natural and holistic forms of medicine and well-being. And so I'm just going to share this quote, biophilia, which Dr. Bauer didn't coin this phrase. Actually, the biologist E.O. Wilson coined that phrase, but it's been used a lot, and a lot of doctors are using that term now. That biophilia means we recognize that we are wired for a connection with nature. And when we are connected with nature, we do better from a well-being standpoint, a social relationship standpoint. Even immune function is better when we are connected to nature. So the Three Rivers Park District up around the Twin Cities, which is an amazing park system. We're so lucky in Minnesota to have all these incredible parks across the state with different agencies and organizations overseeing them. And the Three Rivers Park District, they have a podcast they do. It's called The Wandering Naturalist. And this past year, they did a full month, I think it was the month of March, was focused on forest bathing and the health impacts of being outdoors. And so Dr. Brent Bauer was invited on to one of those podcast episodes, and they did kind of an interview with him. So that would be a place if you want to hear more about, from a healthcare provider in Minnesota who's actually prescribing and encouraging time outdoors to his patients. So I'm not an expert on, the health aspect of this. I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, but there's some great books out there. There's over like 200 different research studies that have been done on this topic, and these are some excellent books I would recommend right here if you want to read more about kind of the science behind this. I'll give you a little bit of that today, but like I said, I'm not a researcher, I'm not an expert in this field, so I'd recommend these books. Last Child in the Woods, Saving Our Children from Nature Deficit Disorder. That book came out in 2005, and that was a powerful book for me personally, because it shed a light on the disconnect between kids and nature and what's happening to our children when they don't go outdoors, what's happening to their mental health, their physical health, their spiritual health, and how that spills over into our communities and into our society. So that was a really powerful book that actually sparked an international movement called the Children in Nature Network, working to connect kids to nature. So if you work with kids, if you have kids, if you've got neighbor kids, this is a great book. And then How to Raise a Wild Child. Dr. Scott Sampson is a paleontologist, and he was the creator of the public television cartoon that was called dinosaur train. I don't know if it's still on the air anymore. My kid is 7 now, and he used to watch it when he was like in preschool. And this book is more for parents and people that work with kids. It's tips on how to get your kids and your family outdoors, just simple tips and ideas. So that's a really nice resource. And then the other two books, Blue Mind and Nature Fix, really dive into the science, like in your brain, what is going on with the neurons and the wiring of your brain when you're outdoors in nature. And the Blue Mind book especially focuses on water and the importance of being around water. And then the Nature Fix, I really like this book, The Nature Fix, because it's very humorous the way she writes it. And Florence Williams writes like your next door neighbor might write. It's not like way over the top. It's easy to understand, and yet it's very thorough. And she traveled around the world interviewing different researchers and scientists. So that's a really, really good book. So I'm just going to share a little bit of some of the ways that nature impacts our health and well-being. You can read those books if you want to really get down to the nitty-gritty of it. So we'll start with physical health. And if you think about when we go outdoors, we are using muscles and parts of our body that we typically don't. So usually we're, like me, I'm sitting at a computer a lot of time. And so to be able to get outside and hike and maybe climb up the hill when I'm hiking and I'm, holding on to things and I'm using different muscles and parts of my body and I'm getting a really good physical workout. And that triggers better appetite later, that I'm going to eat a better meal and I'm going to have better sleep. So there's kind of this chain reaction when we get physical activity outdoors. Physical activity outdoors, or physical impacts of going outdoors also include lowering of the blood pressure. And then cortisol levels, excuse me, cortisol levels are linked to stress. And there's been a lot of different studies where they actually would have people spit in a cup before they go out on a hike and then spit again in a cup after they go on a hike. And they can clearly see a decrease in cortisol, this stress related chemical that our body creates. So that there's a lot of evidence there of that. And we feel that, right? Like we feel better when we've been outdoors, but it's kind of neat that the research is showing what's happening in our body when we go outside. Being outdoors in nature and the way we move around outdoors enhances bone growth, balance, agility. Um, Kids that tend to little kids when they're toddler stage or even littler when they're just learning to walk, when they get to experience like walking around outdoors where it's uneven and there's things you got to be aware of, they tend to be more stable and sure-footed and less clumsy. Myopia. Myopia is nearsightedness, and they're seeing this kind of epidemic surge in people, especially children needing glasses. And, for a long time, I remember as a kid, they used to say, it's from sitting in front of the television. Well, what they found out is it's actually sunlight. You need to get outdoors in the sunlight. Obviously, we don't want to stare at the sun. Nobody recommends that. But being outdoors in the sunlight and also with the different textures and colors in nature, that it helps your eye muscles develop so you have good vision. So that's kind of an interesting thing. Also, when we're out in the sun, that triggers the processing of vitamin D in our bodies, which is really important for strong bones, for cancer prevention, for prevention or reduction in symptoms of depression, and building strong muscles. So I just was reading up on this yesterday. There was a study from the National Institute of Health. It was talking about vitamin D. And it says we have vitamin D receptor cells inside our bodies, throughout our bodies, and through a chain of reactions, starting with conversion of cholesterol in our skin, they produce vitamin D3 when they're exposed to ultraviolet light from the sun. So literally, the sunlight shining on our skin reacts with the why can I not say that word today? Cholesterol, you know what I'm saying? And triggers that processing of vitamin D. That's amazing. Also, research that really began in Japan and it's kind of spread now to the United States looks at phytoncides. So these are chemicals that trees give off, especially conifer trees or cedar trees. Um, and these chemicals are like essential oils, and the trees give off these chemicals to kind of boost the immunity of the tree and attack fungi that might attack the tree and impact the tree's health. And so when we walk through a conifer forest with specifically certain types of conifer trees and we breathe in, it's kind of that Christmas tree smell, if you think of it that way, that very fragrant smell. We breathe in those chemicals. That actually helps boost our immune systems. And some research shows that it can boost these NK cells in our body that fight tumors. So, wow, how incredible is that? Also, research looking at bacteria that's in the soil and that how that can boost our immune systems. In some cultures, there's a practice of eating soil to help with digestion. So I'm not recommending that, but that's just interesting. It's called geophagy. So, and then the whole hygiene hypothesis, which has been proven that, yeah, there are bacteria in the soil that can actually boost our immune system and gut function and all that. And then ionized energy from the earth. When we walk barefoot on the ground or even gardening using our hands in the earth, that ionized energy, the way it kind of moves through our body, can reduce pain and inflammation. So there's a whole movement called grounding built around that, which is fascinating. So those are some of the ways that being outdoors can impact our physical health. If we look at, my screen just froze up. There we go. Mental and emotional health. Um, we know this. We go outside, we go for a hike, and when we come back, we feel more relaxed. We feel happier. So natural environments, especially with trees and water, stimulate the senses, our five senses, and force the brain's attention to shift away from what we call rumination. So rumination is when it's kind of that monkey mind, that part of our brain that's constantly like analyzing and setting schedules and setting tasks and worrying about what has to get done. And it's really, really hard to kind of shut that off. But when we go out into nature, a different part of our brain is activated. And it's that sensory kind of just assessing what's in the environment around us. And it allows that other busy part of our brain to turn off and relax. And so they call it attention restoration theory. And it's been proven. And this is a theory that came about in like the 1970s. And there was, psychologists have talked about it for decades, and it's been proven more recently because they're able to use technology to actually monitor what's going on in the brain when people go outside. So that's really important. Um, the colors, the textures, the patterns in nature actually soothe and calm the mind. They talk about fractals. So if you think about a tree and the way a tree branches, and then those branches branch off, and those branches branch off into smaller twigs, it's this pattern. We see that in watersheds and the way rivers spread out, and even within our own bodies, like the coronary system and the way our veins and arteries are. So this fractal pattern is replicated throughout the natural world. And there's something like intrinsically deep inside of us that is very soothed when we see those natural fractal patterns in nature. Natural sounds, so being able to hear water moving, hear birds calling, are also known to soothe our mind and help increase calm. And certain fragrances in nature as well. There's different kind of essential oils that we can breathe in as we're walking through a meadow or a forest that actually can trigger dopamine release and cause the body and the mind to feel happy. And then also being out in nature is often where people experience moments of awe and wonder. And those are opportunities for us to feel connected to something that's much greater, much larger than ourselves. And that's very important for mental health. And then some other health benefits. Studies show that being outdoors in nature can boost our creativity, our problem solving, social interaction, and feelings of empathy. And they've done a variety of different studies. There's one study or a few studies that have looked at girls in particular. Girls who have a view of or access to trees tend to have higher self-esteem. It's fascinating. And cities with more trees tend to have lower crime rates. So there's tons of studies that have been done looking at how nature not only benefits our individual health, but the health of our communities and society. So I'm going to share a couple stories here. Since 2017, I've been working on an oral history project through the park, through Whitewater State Park, and interviewed around 200 people now. And so I've heard a lot of really amazing stories. And I wanted to share a story about Mark, and Mark gave me permission to share his story. He gave me these pictures. And so Mark is a retired school teacher, and he is also a Vietnam veteran. And I met Mark through fly fishing classes that we lead here at Whitewater State Park. He has been a fly fishing instructor here for probably a couple decades now. And he also helps lead some of our Becoming an Outdoors Woman fly fishing classes. So just a great volunteer here at the park. I interviewed Mark within this past year for our oral history project because I wanted to know more about how fly fishing impacts his well-being, like why he enjoys it so much. So he shared with me a little bit about his time in Vietnam and what that was like. And he told me that when he came back from Vietnam, um, he first of all he was really thin, and he stayed at home. I think he lived at home for the first 6 months or so, and he put on his all the weight because his mom was home cooking meals for him. So he gained his weight back, but he would sleep at night. He would wake up with his jaw really like almost locked. It was really sore. And what was happening was he was sleeping with his tongue pressed to the roof of his mouth so that he wouldn't snore or make any noises in his sleep. Because he said when he was in Vietnam in the jungle and they're sleeping out like in the field, you couldn't make a sound, or your comrades would knock you over the head because if you made a sound that would give away your position. And so for years he actually slept like that, not even really, it was subconscious. He'd wake up with this sore jaw. He said that he took some courses at Winona State University, and there was a professor there that was really big into trout fishing and fly fishing, and was explaining how there's alpha wavelength emitted from deep within the earth, and that when we get out into nature, we don't realize it, but subconsciously our body becomes synced with this alpha wavelength. It's like a pulsating, almost like a heartbeat. That's the way he described it. And that's what he's always believed is what part of the reason helped calm him down when he was out into nature. His body was recalibrating and it was syncing to the rhythm of nature and the earth. He also said that he loves trout fishing because when you trout fish, you are oftentimes in some of the most beautiful places on the planet. It's just the geology of a landscape that supports cold trout streams tend to be very dramatic and beautiful. So I thought it was really fascinating to hear his story. I also just wanted to share a little bit about my story. So I grew up, we're a fairly low income family, and we didn't ever go to state parks. I went to Itasca once when I was in maybe fourth grade. We went to see the headwaters of the Mississippi, but we didn't use state parks. It wasn't something our family, it wasn't a tradition in our family. Um, Eventually, and I grew up in a family where there was divorce. My parents got divorced when I was 3. I don't even remember them together. And there was alcoholism and some other, issues in our family. So nature always for me was the escape. It was a safe place. That's why I think building the forts and being in the willow trees, it felt like a free, secure place to go. And so as I grew up, I eventually ended up getting divorced as well. And when my girls were little, they were almost the same ages as my sister and I. Um, when my parents got divorced. And so as a divorced kind of single mom, and it was really hard when my kids would be at their dad's house. Being alone, I didn't like that. And so I would actually go out to Whitewater, and that was my safe space. I mean, it took away all that worry and stress and the kind of the trauma of divorce. And I felt at home and peace. So nature is powerful in many different ways. So what is the dose that they recommend, that doctors are recommending for us? How much time should we be spending outdoors? So I like this is a neat way of looking at it, this pyramid. If we look at the bottom in the orange, so doctors are recommending, healthcare providers are recommending at least 2 hours a week, but you can break that down. It could be 30 minutes a day, or you could go out on a Saturday and hike for 2 hours. But really, at least 2 hours a week, that's the minimum. You can't get too much nature. I want to emphasize that. You cannot have too much nature, but for sure, at least 2 hours a week. So they're saying at the bottom here in the orange, daily, ideally, you should get about 30 minutes a day. And that's just local. That's your backyard. That's taking a walk around the block. Keep it simple and practical. Do you take your dog for a walk, or if you like to read, can you take your book outside on the front step and read? Can you put a hammock up in the yard? So finding practical ways to get out into nature in your neighborhood each day. And then weekly, can you take it a little further? Can you go to maybe a city park or a nature place kind of on the edge of town, or maybe a regional park, something like that? And if you can do that 2 hours a week, that would be great. got to set some high goals here. And then monthly, finding something that's a little bit further out there. So that might be a state park, or we don't have a whole lot of national parks in Minnesota, but we do have wildlife refuges. And we'll talk about some of the other public lands a little bit later on here. So one weekend a month, can you get out to a place like that? And then annually, can you take a little bit further trip to a place that's more like a wilderness space? And it doesn't necessarily have to be like the Boundary Waters. We have a lot of interesting public lands across Minnesota, and this could be in another state as well, or another country, that you can go explore. A lot of wildlife refuges, a lot of state forest lands where you feel like you're in the wilderness, but really away from a whole lot of other human activity. So that's kind of the doses they're recommending. I want to mention Park RX. So the Park RX um, was kind of originated not that long ago, actually. So Richard Liu's book came out in 2005, and this Dr. Robert Zarr, who's a pediatrician from Washington, D.C., was really inspired by this book when it came out in 2005. And so he started experimenting with, prescribing nature with his patients, and he founded this Park RX America, which now is a national movement to empower healthcare providers to have these conversations with their patients and start prescribing time outdoors. So anybody can go to this Park RX America website, and there's lots of different things you can, watch videos and look at some of their resources. They have different portals if you're a healthcare professional or if you work for parks. There's different portals you can enter into to get different resources to use in your field. But I really like they have an article archive library, so you can actually read through some of these research articles. And then they have a lot of different resources, posters and flyers and little rack cards and things, brochures and things like that that you can access as well. And here in Southeast Minnesota, so Dr. Zarr came to Minnesota, I think it was the Minneapolis Parks Board. It was a group out of Minneapolis that brought in Dr. Zarr about 2 years ago now, and he gave a presentation in the Twin Cities. And a lot of people across Minnesota were really excited after that about starting up something, in their communities. And so down here in Southeast Minnesota with Mayo Clinic, and we have Olmsted County Public Health that's very active in preventative, and connecting people to the outdoors as well. And then there's a lot of different parks people in Southeast Minnesota that were interested in this. So we formed the Southeast Minnesota Park RX, and the group meets monthly. We're meeting virtually since COVID started. Just to brainstorm, share resources, share information, and really encourage these healthcare providers to at least have these conversations with their patients. So we've got a Facebook page and some promotional materials. We've experimented with some different outreach programs for providers, like our Providers to Parks Field Day, where we actually lined up a charter bus and brought a busload of healthcare providers out to see city parks, county parks, and the state parks, and kind of understand how there's this different array of parks and the types of resources and facilities and programs that you can participate in at these different parks. And then we had a pediatrician who's been prescribing time outdoors to her patients talk with the providers and explain like what's worked for her, and kind of give them some tips and information. And then this past year, we were able to offer walks for docs here at Whitewater State Park, where we actually invited out doctors. This was one Sunday a month, and we just took a stroll and we learned about how nature impacts health and well-being and some of the different parks in our area. And then as I'm working on my forest, nature and forest therapy certification, I've been able to offer forest bathing walks as well. And they've been pretty popular. So that's exciting that we're able to start offering more of these health-related programs. Also, our Southeast Minnesota Park RX group this summer was able to get some funding through the local public health programs and put together these campus nature RX packets that we sent to college campuses and high schools, to like the mental health services staff and the guidance counselors, just to help them understand that there is a movement, there are resources to connect young adults to the outdoors and how that's so important for them to learn how to cope. I just learned in the past year and through my own daughters being in college that as kids, as young people transition and go off to college, there's a lot of isolation, anxiety, depression. And so they're seeing a lot of mental health challenges on college campuses. And if we can teach these young people, before they even leave high school, how to connect with the outdoors and have a relationship with nature, that can be very powerful later when they're off to college. So I'm going to focus a little bit on our state parks since that's where I work, and we have a lot of them around the state that you can go explore. So to find and learn a little bit more about our state parks before you even, head out the door, if you go on the Department of Natural Resources website, and at the top of the web page there, you're going to see a lot of stuff. There's a lot of information on here. You can click on destinations, you can scroll down, and it shows you all these different types of public lands that you can click on. We're going to click on state parks and recreation areas, but there are state forests, there's wildlife management areas, scientific and natural areas, aquatic management areas, fishing piers. I mean, there's there's thousands and thousands of places to explore. But right now we're going to focus on our state parks and trails. We have 75 state parks and recreation areas in Minnesota. I think the goal was to have a state park within 50 miles of every resident, and they're pretty close to that. So we're down here at Whitewater in the southeast part of Minnesota. If we click, so this map you'll find on the DNR website, and every single dot on the map is clickable. You can click on a park, it will take you to the park page. And on these park pages, if you look on the left-hand side in this column here, there's some options. So you can learn about the history of the park and the natural plant communities and the wildlife. If you click on about the park, there's an events calendar. There's maps. I can get the campground map and look at different campsites. I can get the trails map. The trails maps are really nice because they have information, like safety tips. If you look at the left-hand column, visitor tips, safety tips about that park. If you only have an hour, what do we recommend you check out? That's kind of a nice little bit of information to know about the park. Little bit of history there. We do have rattlesnakes at Whitewater State Park. Not to worry about. Did you know in the whole history of Minnesota, only one person's ever been bit by a rattlesnake? Or ever died from a rattlesnake, sorry. And that was back in the 1860s. So come to one of our snake programs at Whitewater and we can learn a lot more about our rattlesnakes. Got trail highlights where we kind of point out the different trails and if they're stroller friendly or if we're going to be hiking and really getting a cardio workout. And then other things you can do at the park. So these maps are really nice because they give you really good information about where to go once you get to the park. And you don't have to get them online. You can also get them when you visit the park at the park office. And then we have these GeoPDF maps where you can pre-download these. You have to get this Avenza app, and you can do this on the park websites too. And you can download the map, the Avenza map app on your phone, and then the maps of the parks that you want to explore. And when you get to the park, you can pull it up on your phone, and you can actually, as you're hiking, watch on your phone, and it will actually show where you are as you move. So that's really great for people like me who I get really confused when I try to read maps. So something like this actually is showing me as I move where I am. That's pretty cool. And we have those for all of our state parks. There's also virtual tours you'll find on our websites. Every park has a virtual tour, so you can click on there and you can actually explore the park and see the different kind of highlights of the park. They do a 360 like panoramic image at each location, so you can pan around and explore the space. It's really a neat tool, so you can explore the park before you actually come to it. A lot of these parks offer naturalist programs, and I'll talk a little bit more about naturalist programs in a minute. And then we also have two amazing programs, the Passport Club and the Hiking Club, which we've seen a huge spike in participation in these programs over the last year or so. So Passport Club, Hiking Club, you can either purchase it online or you can come into one of our parks and purchase these. And you get a little book. The Passport Club, you try to visit every single state park. At each park, you get a stamp in your book and you get certain kind of rewards as you get more and more parks stamped off. And then the Hiking Club, you visit each state park and each park has a designated hiking club trail. And you hike the trail to find the word scramble and unscramble the clue and write that in your hiking club book and go back and get it stamped. And so you can win free camping and other rewards. So those are really fun programs and they really help to just keep you motivated and excited about exploring outdoors. Our geocaching challenge program just wrapped up. We had geocaches in every state park and it was part of a statewide program, but it sounds like a lot of the state parks, or I shouldn't say a lot, but many of the state parks are thinking of continuing geocaching programs that will be kind of tailored to their park. So look for that in the coming year. And then we have the I Can programs. I can fish, I can climb, I can paddle, I can camp. And these are great beginner level programs where you go with a guide, and it's usually several families, and you learn these basic skills as a group with a guide. So those are really great programs, doing a lot of kind of outreach across the state. Sometimes they're offered at libraries in different locations. And then we have the Trailblazer newsletter that you can subscribe to, and it's a letter about Minnesota state parks and trails. And we love to hear from our park visitors and kind of highlight our park visitors. So if you have an outdoor adventure from a state park that you'd like to share, you can submit your story. Each state park webpage has a link to the event calendar, but you can also find it if you just go on the DNR website and in the search box, type in like state park events. You can click the calendar, so I could click ahead and look at January, February. I can kind of check way in advance by scrolling through the months, and it will just show me what's going on at the different state parks. So that's a great way to see like what's going to be coming up in March when we have maple syrup programs. I know at Whitewater we require registration for our maple syrup programs. It's free programming, but we can only take like 40 people at each program. So you can see ahead of time when it's posted, you can call and get signed up before the slots fill up. And there's a lot of variety to the naturalist programs that are offered across the state. These are just some examples of some of the programs we offer at Whitewater State Park. I mean, it's amazing what you can learn about through some of these programs. And most of these programs are free. So it's a great way to get outdoors. And I've heard a lot of families say that's why they came to Whitewater, was because of the programs, and that it felt like it was summer camp for the whole family. So that's kind of neat to hear that. Another way to get engaged with our state parks, you can volunteer. I mean, a lot of these parks have friends groups. All of these parks accept volunteers, and you can work with the park staff to figure out a volunteer project or a way that you can share your time or talents to help the park. And you get not only those health benefits of being out in nature, but then you get that intrinsic kind of good feeling inside from helping and giving back. Now, technically, to enter Minnesota state parks, you need to have a state park vehicle permit. The annual permit that we see here on the left is $35, and you have to get that, each year. Each year they feature a different park. So this is Big Bog State Recreation Area that's going to be on the 2022 permit. And this confuses people. If you look at the months, it says January 23, February 23, and so on. So if I were to buy my 2022 permit in January, they're going to punch it where it says January 23. And that means that that permit expires at the end of January 2023. So it's good for a full year. That confuses people, but you get it for a full year. And it gets you into all the state parks in Minnesota and to all those free naturalist programs going on around the state at our state parks. Now, some people, and I'm one of them, I would forget to renew my annual permit, and oftentimes would get the vehicle reminder on my windshield saying my permit was expired. So I've gone to the license plates, and you can get the license plates, and then you don't have to have a state park vehicle permit on your window, which is kind of nice. So the license plates, I think when you first transfer over to the state park license plates, the first time it's like $80, and then each year after that it's $60. But then I don't have to worry about buying the permit. So I like it. Coming up though, this Friday, as they mentioned earlier, is Free Park Friday. So the day after Thanksgiving, instead of waiting in hectic lines at shopping malls and stores, you can come on out to one of your state parks, and it's free to get in that day and just come and explore and kind of de-stress and relax with friends or family out in nature. We do offer free park days a few different times throughout the year, but there's always this one on the day after Thanksgiving. Few other ways that you can kind of learn about nature and enhance your outdoor skills. There's some different programs through the DNR. Linda mentioned the Becoming an Outdoors Woman program, which is an amazing program where it's kind of a welcoming space for women to learn amongst each other. And most of the time the instructors are women, but not always. So we, like she mentioned, we offer swan viewing field trips, morel mushroom, fly fishing classes, and the forest bathing walks. So that's just at Whitewater. Across the state, they offer all kinds of amazing programs and field trips through the Becoming an Outdoors Woman. There's also hunter education and safety, boat and water safety trainings, firearm safety, and then recreational vehicle safety, like snowmobiles, ATVs, that kind of stuff. And those are all different safety programs and trainings through the Minnesota DNR. So there's a lot of different ways you can learn new skills and explore outdoors. Also, if you work with children, there's a whole natural resources education component that we offer with outdoor lesson plans and different teacher trainings and just educational resources and programs for teachers and environmental educators. So those are other resources out there that I don't think many people are aware of. So I mentioned we have a lot of different types of public lands. It's not just state parks. We've got all kinds of places. So there's a tool called the Recreation Compass. If you go on the DNR website in the search box and just type Recreation Compass, it's going to bring you to a map of Minnesota that's an interactive map, and you can zoom in and kind of zoom around the state. And so this is down by Whitewater. I've zoomed it in, and you can see the orangish color area is, according to our map key here on the right, that's a wildlife management area. That's actually 27,000 acres, the Whitewater Wildlife Management Area. It's just north of the Whitewater State Park where I'm located right now. We also have these teal colored areas that are state forest units. We've got scientific and natural areas here that are kind of a purplish color. And we've got a national wildlife refuge that shows up as like a salmon color. And that's just down in my part of the state. If you scroll around Minnesota, you're going to find there are lots and lots of places to explore. The thing is that if you're new to the outdoors, state parks are really a nice, kind of safe, structured place to start and build your confidence, because a lot of these other public lands don't have parking areas, or they don't have restrooms, or they don't have groomed trails. And so it's kind of nice to start at a state park or a state trail where there's a little more infrastructure and there's people there to help answer questions. So I'm going to kind of wrap it up with this quote. I took a walk in the woods and came out taller than the trees. And as we say in the forest therapy, nature guide kind of realm, may the forest be with you. I hope you can come visit me down here at Whitewater State Park sometime. And I think we're going to open it up to some questions now.
Hi, thank you, Sarah. That was wonderful to learn about the health benefits of being outdoors. If you have a question for Sarah, you can type it into the chat right now. As of right this second, there are no questions, but I do want to remind everybody that this Friday, instead of going shopping at Black Friday, you can go to a state park for free. You can free entry. You don't need to have a park sticker on your car, and you can go enjoy all the state parks have to offer. I'm going to give it just a minute, Sarah, and we'll see if there's any questions that show up.
Went through a lot of information, Sarah. That was awesome.
A lot.
And we had a lot of questions on when they can view this later. So I just wanted to remind everybody that if you use your registration and you can go back into WebEx, you'll be able to see that probably in a couple hours this afternoon. Or you can go to our website. If you go onto the Minnesota DNR website and just look up outdoor skills in the search bar, it'll bring you to our Moss page, and the recordings will be on there. It'll probably be early next week for that. So looks like we got some in the chat, Linda. So
Yeah, and there's a question in Q&A too. So the first one is there a place where you can find trail difficulty?
Well, the maps for each park will explain like what trails are more intense and what are more low-key trails. So if you're looking to visit a certain park, I'd go right to the map and you can read on the back. But I don't know of like an overall like statewide chart that shows like the difficulty scale of trails at different parks. I don't think there's like a statewide, inventory resource that you can click on.
Okay. Yeah, so what you showed that if you go to the state parks on the DNR website, click on the state park you're wanting to go to click on maps, then it talks about the different trails that you can hike and the difficulties. So they have them for those individual parks. Great. Another question is, and this is a forest bathing. What is forest bathing? This is something new. I saw it in a community ed book when I was down in the cities. And then you offered it for the boat program and it filled instantly. It's kind of a new topic and you got certified in this. So kind of explain what is it?
Yeah, so forest bathing, I know it sounds like, what? Are we going to run around in swimsuits in the woods? But no. So it's basically slowing down and taking in through your five senses, kind of soaking in the forest using your five senses. So it's guided. You can, I mean, once you've attended some forest bathing programs, you can probably go off on your own and do it. And there are resources and books that kind of can walk you through it. But what I've been saying for me, it's like when I took a yoga class and then I quit taking the class, I kind of quit doing yoga. It's nice to have that guide to help encourage you and lead you through. And then also there's something about the communal sharing of the experience with others that I think a lot of us just aren't getting that kind of interaction these days. But it really is just a slow, mindful experience in the forest. We don't walk far. Actually, in the course of a 2-hour program, we walk maybe an eighth of a mile. So it's a really slow moving experience. But from the 7 or 8 forest bathing walks I've led so far, the participants are just like, wow, I've never slowed down to really just pay attention to what I'm hearing and feeling and seeing. So it maybe isn't for everybody, but those that have come to the walks have really appreciated it. So you have to check one out. It originated in Japan. And actually, it isn't an ancient art, but it's built on some ancient practices. But in the 1980s, they were seeing just overstressed, kind of pandemic health issues in Japan, a lot of suicides and just horrible health related problems because of overworking and overstress. And so the government actually intervened and looked at different strategies, and they discovered that getting people out into nature had the most positive impact. And so they really started focusing research on this, and that's where this forest bathing evolved, and it's spread across Asia, and it's been in the United States for several decades now, but really East and West Coast practice, and it's just reaching the Midwest, I think, in the last 5 to 10 years. So you'll be hearing more about it, I'm sure.
And will you be offering some forest bathing down in Whitewater for the general public? I know you did for the women's program.
Yeah, so I do have one coming up, actually Friday, the Free Park Friday. I'm doing a forest bathing gratitude walk. And then we're doing, well, that's a winter solstice one is going to be the Becoming Outdoors Woman one. There'll be more coming up though, so you can watch the online calendar and see when those will be scheduled.
And the great part about Sara offering these at Whitewater State Park is they are free. Many of the ones I've seen at Community Ed are you have to pay for. Here's another question for you. Do you have some resource recommendations or tips to get kids engaged in nature in a backyard or neighborhood park?
There's a ton of stuff online. I would say go to the Children in Nature Network. That's that big organization that was inspired after Richard Lou's book came out. And there's actually, you can click on there, it's like Nature Families, and they have a ton of resources for families. And you can like start a nature family club in your neighborhood if you want with other families, or things you just want to do as a family on your own in your own yard. So that would be a good place to start.
And I think we have that link under chats. If you go up to the chat section instead of the question and answer, you'll see that link. Another question is, oops, where'd it go? It was about insurance companies. I can't see the question right now. Oh, here it is. How is the health insurance industry reacting to nature-based health benefits? I've just completed the nature fix and the data seems overwhelming.
Yeah, so I'm not an expert on that. There's probably other people in the DNR that could talk more to that, but I think it's definitely a direction that health insurance companies are looking toward. You know, because they already give like discounts or even free YMCA passes depending on your health insurance company to go to a gym and work out. So it seems like it's only a matter of time before there's some similar incentives for getting into parks and accessing the outdoors.
Okay, and I think that's all the questions that I've seen. But I just want to remind everybody that state parks are open this Friday. So you don't have to go shopping and be stressed out. Go to a state park, especially with your kids. If you have college kids coming home or young kids at home, go out and take a walk in the woods. Our state parks are a wonderful resource. And I hope you get to visit Sara down in Whitewater. She's a very enthusiastic state park naturalist, and you would love to have a program with her. So thank you very much, Sara, for doing this today.
Thank you.
I see one more in the chat,
Oh,
Linda. They were
okay.
asking if you could talk a little bit more about the ICANN programs. I know last year they were kind of on hold. I'm not for sure what you know about them for this year, Sara.
Yeah, I believe they're back green light is back on. So the I Can Camp programs, because I know we scheduled them. I suppose if, things change with the pandemic and trends start going the other direction, they might have to cancel things. But right now we have I Can Camps scheduled for next summer. So they'll be advertising those soon. Um, and I would assume that I Can Fish and all those other programs would be back on as well. But yeah, the I Can Camp, we have usually a 1 night or a 2 night option, where you get to come with your family. They provide all the camping gear. They give you a list of, like, you need to bring your bedding and your toiletries and your own food, but they give you like suggested campfire recipes. And then they have like the cooking utensils and the mess plates and stuff. It's a neat program. So you don't have to have all the gear. And that's, important. If you've never tried camping, you don't want to have to invest hundreds of dollars into the tents and sleep, all that stuff. Well, I suppose you need sleeping bags before you try it and feel confident in it. And I've seen a lot of people come back to the park after having done I Can Camp. Now they're camping on their own. So, I mean, it really is a successful model. So I do recommend that if you've never camped before, give that a try.
That's awesome. I did want to, on that same note, we're talking about Free Park Friday, the Black Friday that we nature lovers enjoy more than going to the shopping mall. Right after that, we have gift giving from the DNR. That's our December 1st program. It's a new series of programs for the winter. So everybody out there, make sure you click on our website and join up and sign up for that. But we got there's some really great gift ideas through the DNR, and you just highlighted a few of them with the stickers, the license plates. There's also lifetime licenses and all this stuff. But tune into that one too. That'll be a great one.
Yeah, the Passport Club, Hiking Club, those are all things you can give as gifts, definitely. And you can buy, the online gift cards, and they can use it however they want then. If they want to buy a Passport Club book or a state park sticker, they can use that how they want. And then also, Benji, don't we have the Take a Kid ice fishing that will be coming up in January? And we usually offer a Take a Kid ice fishing event through Whitewater. Some of the other state parks do, but that's kind of a fun way to learn about ice fishing. Get out there in the wintertime too. We need to be getting outside all year round.
Yes, there's lots of opportunities. So keep tuning into our program. Check out your local state park, and we'll try to highlight those as they come up. So we have a lot of great ones this winter. I know we have a winter camping one. I'm not for sure. I know Whitewater does have a couple winter camping sites available. And I'm not for sure if all parks do, but most of them do. So winter camping is one of those things I love, but it's a great way to get out and see some areas of Minnesota that you normally wouldn't see in a quiet state. So I guess I think of state parks in July, they get to be fairly busy, and the beach is full of kids, and it's a lot of fun. And you do some fun stuff, but there's also that winter season where it's quiet and there's beautiful snow scenery, and you can access parts of the park that is froze. You can walk across now and snowshoe in the winter that you can't get to in the summer. So that'll be a neat program coming up in December also. So
Yeah, and winter time is the one time we say it's okay to go off the trail, because when you're snowshoeing, you can actually go across the meadow or whatever. The rest of the year, we say you got to stay on that groomed trail. So you can see places in the winter that you wouldn't be able to see in the summer. Definitely.
Great. Any other questions, Benji?
I didn't see any more. We got a bunch of thank yous in there. One lady's working on her master's on how nature supports wellness, and she really appreciated the presentation. So thanks everybody for tuning in. And I think with that, we'll stop the recording and we'll head back to the practice room. So
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.